All right. Well, we are live in various locations. YouTube, my LinkedIn, anybody else's LinkedIn or YouTube if they've stumbled through incorrectly. But hopefully y'all can see us now. I wanted to bring up this beard banter, and I gave kind of a relatively obscure title, which I'll probably fix in post. But I called it MSPCyberX and MSP Collective Chat. And I actually really have a little bit of an ulterior motive of why I wanted to have this chat, which is we're seeing a lot of groups form of charities specifically around cyber, around regulation shift, around MSPs, around growing our collective world. And what I wanted to talk about today is two of them that I love and respect, but also, is this too much? Why are we seeing it? Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Are we suddenly all waking up that there's a challenge and we're starting to group together and try to figure it out and it's a bit of a land grab in that? Or are there uniquenesses and differences in all the things that are playing out in the communities that they're serving and the needs they're serving? So love for y'all to introduce yourselves, introduce which charities and groups you're affiliated with, and we'll just start with Joy. Go.
Thank you, Matt. Always a pleasure to be with you. Joy Beeland from Summit 7. I'm the Vice President of Cybersecurity Compliance for our MSP. We have about 250 employees and we focus on the defense industrial base. I also happen to be a board member of MSPCyberX and MSPs for the Protection of Critical Infrastructure, both nonprofits, both actively working to help to improve the security posture of MSPs. One with a more specific focus being the critical infrastructure focus is NIST 800-171, and MSP Cyber Exchange is a broader range of regulations and frameworks.
Yeah, well said. Awesome, Joy. Nice to have you here. Who wants to go next, boys? You want to arm wrestle? I'd take Shell if I was betting on the arm wrestling. But,
go ahead, Shell.
Okay. My name's Shell Phillips. I'm the Chief Compliance and Security Officer for Covenant Technology Solutions, Covenant Global, and the new MSP I'm starting, Covenant Gov. And that'll be coming up soon. I've been in the security practice for about 8-9 years. I'm a PMP, a technical project manager, for 40 years. Been doing that, so I've got the technical side, but being a PMP, I'm more compliance, not tech. So I'm the other half of the security equation, and I do compliance consulting. I am a board member of MSPCyberX. Happy to be there, and we'll get talking about that here in just a sec.
Last but certainly not least, Mr. Brian Hubbard.
I'm again Brian Hubbard. I'm the president of MSPCyberX, also president of Evolve Cyber Solutions, and have been in the cybersecurity and computer security game for 40 plus years now, working in the compliance consulting, you name it, been doing it.
I got a question.
Community for years.
I got a question. When you wrote RFC1, did you have to use charcoal back then, or pens been invented?
Rock and hammer.
No, but I was there when they threw it in over across the room.
I digress. And so I got a bunch of folks here that I very much respect. I've worked with in various different capacities over the years. Learned from Joy. You taught me. I'll stop fanboying one day, I promise. But you taught me in one of my first cybersecurity classes I ever took formally. What do you think about my initially posed question? And then we'll get into really quickly why you're involved with the two that you're involved with. And I know, Joy, you have to drop a bit early, so I'll let you start again. Tell me what your thoughts are on, like, do we have too many of these communities forming? Do they serve a different purpose? And is it an outward sign of good that we have people, like, when something new and cool comes up, sometimes you have a bunch of cycling communities and clubs, and you have a bunch of people trying to, like, is it a outward sign of good that people are actually looking for these answers, and that's why these groups form? So help me understand.
Yeah, it's a huge benefit to the MSP community in my mind. And I don't know that there's such a thing as too many. I think that where people's focus, attention, and needs lie is where the ones who are serving the highest and best purpose are going to capture the larger part of the community. That's just the normal way of how things happen.
Sure.
But, you know, there's a huge movement now kind of away from vendors leading the messaging and the sales cycle, and these organizations like the two that we're talking about today coming in and saying, look, the best interest that we have is of the community and the unified voice that we carry, in order to kind of help guide what happens, influencing legislation, even influencing what the standard looks like, the best, highest and best standard looks like for MSPs with cybersecurity regulations. So I think it's a really big net positive and long overdue that we're all lining up to do this the right way.
I want to real quick before we move on, I want to pick two things that were just really awesome in that. First, this trying to come to a highest and best standard that needs to be influenced by the members of the organization, but also that is of the organization's belief in where we're going and what we need to do to solve this problem. So that's the first piece that I really love.
Yep.
I think one of the best opportunities of something like this that dawns on me is that we all start using common things to come to those conclusions, so that we now are talking the same thing, so that as groups do this, we're not completely reinventing the wheel. And I think that's also something that's coming into this is part of that I've seen is very standards based and standards influencing. And it's very right. That's your whole story, Joy. I mean,
and it's vendor agnostic. Both of these organizations are vendor agnostic. And I think that's a huge key to this.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed. And I don't mean that self-serving and being involved in these organizations. Brian, what are your thoughts on the kind of posed thoughts? First, like too many, too much, or is it a good thing? Or is it a mix of those? And then tell me about your organization and why you went down this path.
Yeah. So, I mean, what are there 40,000 MSPs in the country? There are literally millions and millions of small businesses in this country.
And in fact, not only in this country, in every country, it's the number one number of businesses like everywhere, globally.
Yeah, vast majority are small businesses, right? So who's helping the small businesses? It's the MSPs.
Yeah.
And who's helping the MSPs? We need lots and lots of people to help the MSPs, because we need to make sure not only we're standardizing on what we're doing, right, but we're also treating ourselves in the MSP industry as a critical infrastructure, because we are. Mm-hmm. The country can't run without small businesses. Small businesses 100%. Can't run without MSPs.
Yeah, and
so are part of the critical infrastructure.
So, and to come back from that statement, Joy, you had said this collective voice, as well as Brian, to your point, this the collective standard, and Joy, to your point, the collective standard. That collective voice is something that needs to be heard right now. Nobody speaks about the SMB. Nobody understands how much influence the MSP has in the way, the fate, the life, the existence, or the failure of small to mid-sized business in our collective worlds, right? Like that's one of the things. Can you speak towards that collective voice, Joy, and what your thoughts are on that? And you're involved in another charity that you spoke about earlier.
The reason the MSPs for the Protection of Critical Infrastructure was formed is that we can see that there's going to be, and there is a lot of like mention of an external service provider, which relates to managed service provider within the CFR. Like this is coming down in the Code of Federal Regulations from government entities who know not how MSPs function. They don't understand the way that we go into our customer networks, what the amount of liability and responsibility is that we have for those, and also how different we all are. So it's like herding all these different animals and trying to paint them as one color.
And paradigmically also, Joy, one of the things, I've done several talks where I've put a slide up that just says MSP not equal MSP. Exactly to your point. And it was to say two things. One, how different we all are. But two, that when most government and enterprise-focused humans think of MSP, they think of a very linear service provider that does X for them, that is SLA, that they have very formal things. They have very penalty-based understandings of finances. Like it's a mature organization. Even the least mature ones are more mature because of that inheritance. MSPs that we talk about literally could have made paintings yesterday, could literally have been someone that did something completely different and now decided I want to be in tech. And so you have this balance of, like, to your point, there's just such a broad spectrum here. And yet the people that are our legislators, the people that are our policymakers, the people that are understanding things are looking through the lens, even if they do understand the word MSP, of that very corporate enterprise lens that is not the majority of the industry. Right, it is actually probably quite the minority of the industry. Is that? Do you have any thoughts on that, Joy? You're an idiot. whatever
Totally
might be.
fair. And if we don't represent to those government entities who we are in the best way for us to be engaging in a meaningful way that both benefits the small business clients that we're trying to protect and our industry, then we're just going to be flying in the wind according to whatever whims. Initially, actually, the DoD thought that MSP should be FedRAMP. And for us to look at what that kind of criteria would be, it's a non-starter. It would actually kill the entire sector of the small business.
So common voice coming out of these type of communities, and in some ways very focused at a certain thing. Like, for example, you tackle mostly 80171, CMMC, extensibility, and some of the ways the government and federal government does business in that function. There's also a grander challenge too, which is the overall MSPs serve all sorts of businesses that may not be in that direct definition of critical infrastructure, at least as it extends today. And you and I, Joy, share a very common view of where that goes long term. But the point being is there's so much that's outside of that swath. So Brian, I'll bring it back to you just a sec, back to MSPCyberX, because I think this has a lot to do with the origin story of MSPCyberX, if you want to go. And then Shell, promise you're next, buddy. I got it on a clock rotation here.
I'm good.
So like I said, I've been doing cybersecurity related things for 40 plus years, and mostly working on the DoD side, intelligence community side, that sort of thing. But over the last, I had a small hand in helping with the NIST with the original version of the cybersecurity framework, and started looking.
That's fair, Brian.
Yeah, you can blame me. Version 2.0 is much better than the one I was involved with.
I tease.
So starting to work with small businesses and realizing that there really hasn't been any attention given to small businesses over the years.
Certainly not contextual.
Yeah. So in the hopefully the last decade of my career here, I want to make sure I leave a legacy, and I want to work with as many small businesses as possible. So the MSP Cybersecurity Exchange, I can work with like a couple of dozen, as a personal goal, I can work with a couple of dozen businesses a year and help them with their cybersecurity practices. But if I work with MSPs, by virtue of working with MSPs, I'm working with tenfold of that, right? I can affect way more businesses that way. And by standing up the MSP Cybersecurity Exchange, which was a brainstorm that I had over a lunch with another one of our board members, Max Berger, from Kaseya, and we were talking about what does the MSP community need, and so we brainstormed this, went back, wrote it up, and then out of the blue, I got a call from a White House staffer because I was doing some work with a community college here in Baltimore. And they were doing an event with I always forget his title, but the cybersecurity czar from the White House.
Oh, gotcha. National ONCD, the Office of National Cyber Director. Yeah.
Thank you. I can never come up with that. But he was doing an event. So the White House staffers would call me and ask if I had any workforce development initiatives for cybersecurity I wanted to highlight. And so I said, well, we got this thing we were talking about. But to help MSPs and explain to them what it was. And they were like, oh, that's great. And they took it back and talked to the director about it, and the director loved it. So they said, write it up. So I wrote it up. He announced it at this event in like December of 2023. And they said, oh, by the way, we need some commitments. So I said, oh, okay, we'll stand up by February of 2024, and we'll have 100 members by 2024. And then they went and they announced it. And he said that at this event. And then it got published on the White House website under the workforce initiatives. And I said, oh, I have to actually do this now. So we stood up on Valentine's Day of 2024. We actually launched the website.
I remember it like it was yesterday.
Yes, we formed a nonprofit incorporated as a nonprofit in April. And then formed the board of directors in June.
Well, I love some elements of that creation.
And we're over 200 members so far.
So before we get to the purpose, and I'll ask Shell kind of tackle his purpose. Yeah. So I want to start back through this journey. So Joy and what she's been involved with the collective, as well as with MSPCyberX, is talking about common voice common standards, right? The ability to have a common voice in the way we speak about these things and adhere to a set of common standards. That's the kind of joy, if I've recapped that well. Brian, you then talked about why MSPs, because MSPs have 10 times the impact, and you come from a bit of a tangential world that wasn't MSP centric.
Exactly.
And looking at this from that perspective, going, well, how can I solve it? Oh my God, they're the force multiplier, which at the same time, the threat actors have gone, oh my God, those MSPs are juicy threat multipliers or force multipliers, right? So you have that playing out. And then I want to touch on something that I have personally, because I just started a charity as well. I started a charity. This is not literally you get a cuckoo clock and you get a cuckoo clock. I'm not intending it to be that. But I have a charity I started with Robert Chaffee, and it has a very specific purpose to be a bit of a breeding ground for a lot of programs that don't find themselves existing anywhere else, right? It's a very specific purpose that we're building there. And it houses ERT, or emergency response team. It houses some of the work I'm doing with CIS and the mapping of frameworks in general, not just CIS, right, across the board, and that kind of extensibility. So that's the neat thing about it, is that's legacy. You said something I wanted to tag into, Brian, which is I want to leave a legacy. That's exactly why I did this with Robert Chaffee. We looked at each other, and me and Jason Slagle and Robert Chaffee found ourselves in a weird position where we had to instantly stand up a charity. And I could get into that in a whole nother show. And this was related to CompTIA and some of the things that are playing out there. And so we stood up a charity to support ERT as an outcast of that, to make it better and more functional and more capabilities. And in that moment, I said, you know what? I've been wanting to leave a legacy. I want to be able to donate the money that I've earned and things that I do towards something that outlives me, something that makes a difference in the future. And I think what's neat is I almost believe, Joy, you had a touch of legacy in the formation of the collective too, right? That came from this from your company at a corporate level, from what legacy you wanted to leave. If you want to speak to that real quick of what created that.
Well, I thought it was extraordinary that our founders coupled with our biggest competitors and said, we can do this alone, fight the good fight, or we can join together and really have one common voice leading. Exactly. And I think that just speaks volumes to what, when you look at what are we truly trying to do, it is altruistic, that it's like, let's just do this the right way all together. Yeah. You can hold hands and be a lot stronger going across that finish line.
And still compete quite well. There's a lot of pie to eat here. Shell, you've been in this game a small number of years, like 48 years based on the calculation I did on the first two things. So what do you see here, man? Why are we seeing this spring up? And have you seen this before? Like in the PMP world, have you seen things like this play out in that kind of community-led world?
Yeah, I want to go back, excuse me, to your original question. Are there too many, and what are the issues there? And I want to remind our listeners that back when you and I teach classes on CIS 18 to MSPs, probably over 150 now, what we recommend is that they find a friend, right? So these groups, these peer group collections are friends. In the CMMC challenge, there's so few of us doing the work that we need all the friends we can get.
There's a lot of people say they're doing the work, but I'm sorry.
My caution is this. There is a lot of misinformation. And if that misinformation gets siloed in these little different groups, and there's no crossbreeding or information, references to good quality speakers, those who know the business and can actually speak to it, we're growing a bunch of misinformation silos that we need to be careful of. So while we need friends, we need these peer groups. I host a couple myself. We also need the crossbreeding, and we've found that MSPCyberX actually brings us to that place where we can actually rub shoulders with the experts. I take advantage of Brian. I'm asking him questions all the time, free of charge, and I will make it up to you, brother. But the point is there's a place you can go to actually get the real word, and that's sort of how I see this particular group, and that's why I'm involved, because we want to give a body of knowledge that is accurate and helpful. I come from the small and medium business environment rather than coming from enterprise, and we're focusing on the moms and pops that punch out the windshield brackets for the F-35, right? They are small. They do not have the budget to spend six figures to get compliant. So we've downscaled to the point where we're still making a decent living, but we're helping them get into that place and sustain that. So that's why I'm starting the MSP that's going to be certified to level 2, and running that sort of process for the SMB section of the marketplace.
Mhm.
All right. Well, Joy, I want to speak towards you having to leave us, and then we're going to come back to that of the rubbing shoulders and being in the right place to be able to exchange the right ideas and validate the things we're doing and finding a friend. But Joy, people looking to help out with the MSP Collective, I think I've spelled that correctly. Would you double check for me on the screen?
You did, yes.
I get one win a day, boys and girls. I got one. Look at that. Awesome. Okay. Very good. Joy, any parting thoughts before you have to drop off? I know you have a very packed schedule and really dealing with some humans you love.
One thing I'm hoping that you'll dive into, first of all, let me say that Brian Hubbard is an extraordinary human being, the best boss I've ever had. And the 2 years I spent with him at Edwards was formative in everything I do now. And so his leading this MSP Collective, or the MSPCyberX, really the intention for us and how we partner together and complement each other is that he'll help MSPs with Shell get ready for their CMMC journey, doing it smart with a third party. Please don't waste your time going anywhere else. Once you're ready, once you have your CMMC level 2 certification, then you join the ranks of the MSP Collective, where we're all in 100% focused on the defense industrial base. And both of these organizations are going to grossly arm you to do it the right way. And I'm just extremely proud of both of these organizations and really, really honored to be a part of both of them.
Just say that I would not have had nearly the appreciation I have of the MSP community either, had it not been for Joy coming and taking me by the ear and saying, "Why aren't you paying attention to MSPs?"
All right, hold on then. I've got to ask you real talk. How shocked were you when you really learned the state of the union, Brian?
It was shocking.
Because you come from a world that was very NIST centric, very ideals, very corporate and enterprise led.
Tower.
Yeah. Booz Allen Hamilton, right? If I remember.
Yep.
Thank you, Joy.
20 years of Booz. Yeah. See you later, Joy. Thanks. 20 years at Booz Allen, working with the Intel community, and when in the commercial space, working with very, very big organizations.
And so when you step out of that world that had that paradigm, and I love thinking about things in paradigmical view, like that paradigm, how shocking was it to walk into? What do you mean you don't have an asset list? What do you mean you don't know where your data is? What do you mean you haven't done these basics, bro?
Yeah.
Like what?
I mean, the shock came during in 2012, I guess it was when we were doing the workshops for the NIST cybersecurity framework. And at the first workshop, when we had, I think we had 400 people at the workshop.
That's a good turnout.
All kinds of industry in there.
NIST gets way more turnout than Matt Lee does. Gosh, I need to have a name like NIST or something.
Those workshops were incredible. And what we found was, when we started talking, we were coming out of very NIST-centric. Let's start with the AC1 and
totally.
And everybody came in and said, we do not need another controls catalog. What we need is a framework so we can actually build our business. We are focused on our business first, and cybersecurity should be part of enabling that business, right? So the framework completely changed from where it started before the first workshop to where it was after that first workshop, and it started down the side. And now obviously it's gotten a little bit of traction. It went worldwide, I think, in 2014 as soon as it got published. But anyway, it was a major eye-opening experience for me to hear from a lot of these small businesses that came and joined and explained that what their situation is, right? And that they couldn't just keep going after these standards that really didn't match their business. And they needed some way to think of it as a cybersecurity program. They needed help with a cybersecurity program, not a compliance framework.
Which ironically just takes something that's complex and tries to drive it down to the intended results at the end of the day, that then they have to interpolate and figure out how to do it if they then just find themselves back to the complexity. Anyways, way too off on a ledge. Shell, so one of the things you brought up earlier was this, you've been able to leverage that watering hole. And that's a lot of what these communities become, right? I've seen it done in the enterprise space. I've seen it very done with like Simply Cyber. Great job over there with Jerry Ogier. Like, he's really created a community. I think in your case, what you're looking for is not just numbers of humans, which we do want to increase the numbers, obviously, at MSPCyberX and as part of our job as board members. But the point is that how do you get the right humans? How do you get the right humans? And I think, Shell, speak towards that a bit of like, how do we attract the right people in there? I think there's two components. There's good consumers of the content that make good people, but then there's also like having the ability to tap experts in the field that are part of that. So talk on that a bit.
Well, fortunately, in this climate right now, the three of us have contact with people who are in the know, the best experts, the people who respect us too in our own environments and circles, and will listen when we say, hey, we want somebody that can be an expert, that can be someone we could look up to, that we can ask questions of, who really is in the know. And so we're growing this, not box tops and cereal boxes, everybody join. It's really by invitation, not necessarily limited to invitation. But it's
we have been sniping certain people to be involved in this, right?
Exactly. It's targeted, and it's targeted for a purpose. We want to. This is not just CMMC, and I have to point that out. This is across the board cybersecurity. So it's
why they let some idiot CIS expert in. I digress. Expert. I've never used that live before. I actually have to make sure and pause and speak towards this because I don't want it to sound like hubris. I have a new understanding of the term expert thanks to a buddy of mine named George Comide. He did a talk about the physiology and psychology and anthropology influences on cybersecurity. And one of the things he put up was expert equals someone that's tried a lot and failed a lot. And I'm like, that I am. I will take that. I have tried a lot and failed a lot. So anyways, just didn't want to let that cold come out there for everybody.
So there's two pieces to this. Certainly, we want to invite the best of the best, but we also want to open the doors to everybody else that needs to learn from the best of the best. In other words, all the MSPs who are trying, who are looking into it, who are trying to up their cybersecurity game. And so it's not exclusive. It's not an exclusive club. It's not something that's just for the experts, but we certainly want to populate with those who know what's going on in the various disciplines. And again, on the website, you'll see CIS, you'll see NIST, CSF. What is it? CSF or whatever?
Yeah, CSF, cybersecurity framework.
And you'll see HIPAA, and you'll see all the disciplines represented. But right now, the big thrust is for CMMC. So that and that's been my focus. So that's why I kind of talk about it the most. But it's across the board, all cybersecurity disciplines, frameworks, and that sort of thing. And it's a great site. It's kind of built like a small town. You've got these focal points. You've got a general store, and you've got the place where you can hang out, and the place where announcements are, that sort of thing. And there's a library, and you can actually pull documentation out of that. You can pull templates that people have built and supplied that are very useful. Things like shared responsibility matrices and documents like that can help in your process. So it's a really good collection of good tools, good people, and then everybody else that wants to be a good tool or person.
Yeah, fair.
I'm a good tool.
I'm a good tool. I love that we just got us all to admit we're tools here. Maybe not Brian. Brian was better as a
I've been called that before.
That's fair. But better than you guys too. No, I digress. Yeah, I'm more involved just because if there's one thing that I want to do, and it really much goes back to legacy for me, right? Like, I have sat in the trenches knowing that we had caused people to suffer, knowing that we had been the destruction of businesses for the third time, and the level of hatred and anger and frustration that were there. And so for me, anytime I feel like the ask is not massive and the impact that I might be able to have is valuable, that I can make some degree of a legacy, that somebody makes a difference in our world. And we're at a time where I think we're genuinely at like an inflection point, y'all. I mean, I think I was just in a private kind of event just a minute ago, and I was asked to speak on what the next future looked like for MSPs if we went forward 15 years. And I said, in 15 years, half of you aren't in the room, at least half, maybe more. And after the shock wears off, the reason for that is there's not been any other industry that's allowed to proliferate in a way that has no barrier to entry, that has so much impact on, let's not say lives, let's not say security, let's say raw dollars and profit of the American populace and global populace at that. And when you start looking at that, we're such an under-regulated, under-managed, under-barrier to entry, under-capability having, under-understanding that we're having to have conversations to educate people on basic topics. And I don't mean that to be diminutive or pejorative. I just mean it is the state of where we are in capitalism and in our world from a technology perspective, and that every technology has gone through this. Maybe not so proliferously, maybe not so quickly. And so my point is that I think all you have to do as an MSP right now is be better than the others and grow and continue to iterate and continue to get better. We're in this magical place where you do not have a barrier to entry. Go be a car manufacturer today. Hey, I want to start making cars. All right, yeah, safety testing, got $1 billion, yeah, okay, and design, and okay, oh gosh, regulatory. Okay, so can I get $3 billion to go into a competitive and crowded market with no real innovation? Anyone? Like, that's the world that will develop. Today, we're in a world where you can make a car in your garage, roll out with those goofy goggles and say you're Model T, right? And I'm certainly cutting off the edge, but billions have been made by Ford. And now it is very hard to be another car manufacturer. And all I'm saying is we're at this magic time, and, you know, I'll kick it back to you, Brian, of like, it's really just to guide people through that experience of staying ahead of the curve right now when there's really nothing that makes us. And CMMC, to your point, Shell, is the first one that's probably on the horizon that is going to change a great many of our lives that people are most underprepared for. And that is why it is most talked about in that community right now. Thoughts, anybody? Want to go off on that?
I think it's sort of when I wish I still had a study that Booz Allen did years ago, but it was on disruptive technologies, right? And how technologies can just the curve, right? So if you think about the MSP world, we are in this sort of early immature phase where it's a very storming kind of environment, right? The price of entry is very low. You can throw your gum against the wall and see if it sticks, and eventually it will start to will peak, and then it'll start to normalize, right? So there'll be some norms set, and then there'll be a consolidation.
Yep.
And then the industry will, kind of.
And you are kind of seeing that in our world, right? There are $250 million revenue MSPs. Right. I'm still part of one, right? Like, you are seeing that consolidation. But I will argue that you're seeing that consolidation with no respect to the maturation, at least in a lot of those cases.
True.
I digress, but yeah.
True.
Yeah. And that tends to happen in any sort of technology industry, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
There's this great storm and lots of, well, in this case, it's not as much venture capital, but there's a lot of
PE
capital
now. Yeah, it's PE. Not a lot of capital, natural born capital, but yeah.
And so all that will cause some maturation of the industry. But the other thing that's going to cause it is what we've been talking about, right? Is people are waking up, the government's certainly waking up and saying, we need our data protected. And so, hey, our contractors are where we start. You better protect our information, right? And the people that you work with need to be able to protect your information. The information we're providing you doesn't stop with you. It starts whoever else you're letting touch it. MSPs are there. MSPs are helping them manage that environment.
So Matt, back to your point about half of you won't be in this room in 5 years or whatever. It's already happened with CMMC. You have to be certified to some level to actually play in the game. And you're seeing MSPs, while they don't have to absolutely be certified at this point, they have to be at least have somebody with certification.
A test that they've taken this class.
Yeah. And just like PMP, I mean, that's a SRO, self-regulated organization that's licensed. I think we're going to see that. You know, I've talked about this a lot. We're going to see that kind of licensure, and CompTIA's Trustmark is already a start in that direction to get certification as an MSP.
Something's Trustmark.
It's something. Yeah, gotcha.
Sorry,
something.
That's my one, y'all. I love you, CompTIA. That's my one. I don't do many of them, but that's my one.
But you're seeing that starting to take place,
100%.
and it will accelerate, I believe.
I agree.
When the rest of the federal government sort of adopts CMMC, I mean, now
it's not just that, Shell. I was actually, so again, back to your point of speaking to staffers, I don't know how, I don't know why, I actually do, and I say thank you very much to that wonderful woman that put me in touch with them. But I got to speak to a bunch of Senate staffers from the Homeland Security Committee about MSPs, about specifically SMB and regulation. It was really around that. One of the questions, and this is just how preposterous it was proposed as, how are current MSPs dealing with all the regulation they face today, and would adding more destroy their businesses? Wait, what? What? What all the what?
Do you ask about regulation?
What? I did, and they didn't have one. They couldn't come up with one. Like, they just assumed. And that's what I was there to shed light on. And instead I shed light on the fact that MSP doesn't equal MSP. If you are even thinking about ones with tangential, it's because they're enterprise serving MSPs that have had some direct SLA, direct status. Like even back in your days with Booz Allen, you'd go look at that MSP and you'd be like, okay, they've met their contracts, here's their SLAs, they're doing their things, they've met their requirements. That's not this MSP. This MSP literally just put a sticky note on the window that said MSP with a nice little art drawing, and they're now an MSP. Not to be negative.
Yeah.
So like that was one of the challenges. Anyways, go.
Kind of like pen testers, you know. I just bought a license. I bought a Nessus license, so I'm a pen tester.
I'm going to throw you out of the room right now, Brian. I'm gonna, like right this second. I'm about to toss you.
I wanted to throw that out there. Just
you're terribly young.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it's the same. But the point, you know, MSPs aren't regulated, right?
Right.
But their customers are
starting to be more and more.
Well, and there's a lot of rules out there that. They may not be directly regulated, but if they don't,
they're contractually obligated, or they have other things that are in that space.
Yeah, people are going to come after them. You know, so if you lose your customers, if a small business loses its customers PII, then and there are state regulations in all 50 states that say how you have to report it and what you have to do. And
it's become, to Sheldon's point, more normalized and more expected.
Yes.
And even if you were to say, Shel, like if I was to play devil's advocate about your needing to have a license to do stuff in CMMC, or at least needing someone on your staff to have one, that only works if somebody goes, do you have someone on your staff that has a license, or else I can't do business with you? And so you have to normalize the expectation of that from a community of SMBs that are buying from those MSPs. Does that make sense, Shel? That's my devil's advocate argument.
Absolutely. That's why right now we're focusing on CMMC, because they have to use certain MSPs, and it's a greenfield for us that are actually on top of it. Right now, they can't just go anywhere.
And you're going to have someone inspecting it is the point. Someone at some point is going to be looking at that and going, do you have somebody that's doing these things, yes or no?
And that's in addition, it's a very sticky industry, because if they change MSPs midstream, they have to be recertified, which is
100%.
process.
Not to turn this into a CMMC talk, but the point is for everyone, if you want more of this kind of conversation, I think, what are the options, Brian? Is there a free option to come in and just consume? What do you have to spend $500? What's the number? And how much do I get each time?
So there's the website where what we're trying to do is populate a members only website with good information. Trying. We're a little behind the curve on that, but we're trying, you know, as much as we can muster a good website, we're trying to get it together. And then there's the paid side, which is the active member side. And there's a Slack community that we built so that we can come and get real-time answers. I run weekly, typically weekly. This month is going to be a little awkward, but weekly CMMC office hours just to talk about CMMC. And then we have monthly town hall meetings for the active members to talk about different topics and bring in speakers and things like that. But you know, the key is, you know, whatever your issue is or your question about compliance or what do I do with this, you can throw it into the Slack environment. We'll, you know, get it the answer, right? Because we have experts in there from all these different fields. We even have a couple of people that actually know something about CIS.
I've never met them.
Yeah, I don't know who they are, but I heard tale.
I'm with Fat Lee or something. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah. And you know, and in addition to Matt Lee, we got
Curtis Dukes, yeah, is on the board. Yeah.
So from CIS. So you know, and that's one. And the FTC safeguard rule, PCI, you know, HIPAA, you know, all these. We have people that are well versed in all these areas that are available to reach out to. And if there's a question that comes up that nobody knows anything about, I'll go find them because I know a couple of people in the community over the last 40 years, so I think I can find them that know what it is. I'll get the answer. So it's a good environment, good way to get that help that you need, and to kind of up your game is the intention.
I think I'll wrap it up with this because I do have back-to-backs all day, and I'll take advantage of a few extra minutes. But I'll wrap it up with this of saying, you don't have to join MSPCyberX. You don't have to join the MSP Collective. You don't have to join any one of the ones that I might name or be behind, but you do need to be involved in a community. I think you do need other people for nothing more than the solace of learning if you're doing the right things or learning where you're behind. I think it's the camaraderie and the protection of understanding that sometimes life sucks and it's great to have somebody to go complain and talk to and learn from. Mm-hmm. Go join a community. I'd love for you to be one of the ones I'm affiliated with, but I also understand that I just want you to be involved with other humans that genuinely can help you down your path as y'all grow together. So that's my closeout. Anybody else got some closing statements for us?
No, I'd say just come on in, join the community, have some fun. We're gonna
find a friend. That's all.
That's it. Yes, I'm gonna go. I'm withdrawing my statement. I'm just gonna end with Sheldon's answer, which is go find a friend. And we'll close it out with that. Thank y'all so much for being here.